You're listening to the Self-Made is a Myth, Make a Difference Together show with your host, Coach Tim Campsall, where we talk with successful business owners to hear the stories of their journeys in building their successful businesses. And more importantly, we recognize the folks who help them excel because we know that achieving business success is not something we can do on our own.
Hello, everyone. This is Coach Tim Campsall, and I'm excited to have a fellow business owner with us today. Something unique about my guest is that he's really good at carnival games and he can juggle. So we're going to have him share a little bit about that here in a minute. In his downtime, he enjoys reading, and he's most proud of shooting a hole-in-one in golf this year. That is awesome. It's my pleasure to welcome Shaun to the show today. Hi, Shaun.
Hey, how are you doing, Tim?
I am fantastic. Thanks for asking. Well, hey, let's have you start with introducing yourself. Tell us your name and a little bit of your personal story, like where you're born, live, about your family and hobbies.
Yeah, so I'm Shaun Souers. I grew up in Indiana in Carmel, went to Carmel High School, went to school at IU through Kelly School of Business. After school, took a job in Indianapolis, so I've lived in the Indianapolis area my whole professional career, but have really never worked until fairly recently in the Indianapolis area. I've kind of traveled for work or worked in other cities, but had a home base here in Indianapolis. Married to my wife, Sarah. We've been married about 11 years, got two little girls, 2nd and 4th grade, Mary Margaret and Eleanor. And we live here on the north side of Indianapolis.
Very cool. Well, hey, let's tell us a little bit more about the carnival games.
Yeah, so a buddy of mine, we were in college and down in Bloomington, and they used to have the fun for all that would come through town. It would come through the Memorial Stadium parking lot, and one summer he got a book, about a 1,000-page book, and it was all the tricks on how to win carnival games. And so we studied this really hard one. Went spring and into summer, and we thought we were going to win everything. And sure enough, we figured out all the tricks that we could. And of all the things I studied throughout college and everything else that I probably forgot most of it, I can still go to the fair and win lots of stuffed animals and games and everything based on all the tricks that I learned from this book, 25 years ago. So I'm still fairly good at carnival games all these years later.
That's so awesome. And a hole-in-one.
Yeah. I play not tons of golf, play about once a week. Been part of a golf club up in belong to Woodland Country Club in Carmel since about 2010. Never had a hole-in-one before. I'm a pretty decent golfer, about a 10 handicap, but never, have really been that close to a hole-in-one, and kind of out of the blue on Carb Day weekend this year, hit a hole-in-one with a bunch of friends. So pretty exciting way to kick off race weekend this past May.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
So Shaun, is there a funny story that your family likes to tell about you that you'd be willing to share with us today?
Well, it's probably not one specific story, but I live in a house full of girls. So they like to give me kind of a hard time about the fact that I'm a joiner in the girl activities. So, whether it's, painting nails or going to American Girl, I took the girls, my wife and I took the girls this summer to see Taylor Swift. So I'm all in on the girl activities. I've got, a lot of friends who have all boys or who have, boys and girls, and they give me a hard time about kind of all the activities, but I'm 100% in on the girl dad activities, and as long as they'll include me in things, I'm all in. And so I get kind of a hard time about some of that stuff, but I'm not getting up on it as long as they'll include me.
So what's the favorite color of nail polish that you've
I think the brighter the better. Like all the neons, the 80s colors are probably the best.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Shaun, tell us how did business come about, and at what point did you have the confidence that you could run your own business?
Yeah, sure. So I've always kind of been part of small companies, really, for the last 25 years. Since I came out of school, I was part of a fairly small company out of college. It was entrepreneurial, really driven, and and even out of that, kind of had that kind of spirit. But this company that I have now, as I was, kind of having some conversations with some friends that were in the real estate industry, they had been asking a lot of questions around, how technology could play a role in what they were doing, and how, as their business had changed from, say, 2010, 11, when things were really, different than they are today. They knew that technology was going to have to play a role in it, but it was really something that hadn't been part of that industry in the past. It really hadn't been a focus. So in the 2018-19 kind of time frame, several people in my social circle, knowing that with my technology background, had asked, lots of questions about where this played a role. I was kind of helping some people out on the side as I was in the process of kind of ramping down or selling another business that I've been involved in. And then as 2019 kind of wound down into 2020, when COVID happened, there was a huge push on the real estate side, specifically in the multifamily side, to integrate lots of technology. And so I helped a couple of groups out, again, as not as a favor. I was getting paid for it, but it really wasn't a full-time job. But it became very obvious that it wasn't one or two people that needed this opportunity. There was a large group of real estate companies that were looking for this help. And so I looked at it as an opportunity to expose that and to get into that. And so that's kind of where the idea came about, that this might be an opportunity. And so it grew from an idea, or from helping some friends out, into really a full-blown business.
Very cool. So tell us a little bit more about the company. What's the name? What do you guys do? How do you help people?
Yeah, so our company's called ResTech, and what we are is we are a technology integration company for real estate companies. So we work mostly in the multifamily side, so apartments, but we also do some commercial and some warehouses and some office building stuff as well. And we really have three different verticals. And so we have one piece is our on-site technology. So that would be any technology that would go on-site at a property site. So that could be cameras, that could be smart home integration. So think like locks or thermostats, really anything that you would put in your single family home that's being integrated into the apartment side, access control, those types of technology. The other piece of our business then is what we consider our virtual leasing. So this would be, we have a call center, so taking inbound calls, moving things out of the leasing center and putting them in a centralized piece. So people are getting rid of sort of redundant tasks and move them out of leasing centers, and instead of every leasing center having their own call center, basically putting it in one spot. And there's other tasks that would go along with that too. Maybe it's renewals, or it's delinquencies, but moving that stuff centralized. CRM implementations, touring, but really all of those leasing activities would be kind of another piece of that. And then the third piece of our business is what we consider our executive partnerships. So these would be fractional executive roles. So think, CMO, CTO, CIO type roles that some real estate companies, maybe they're not quite at a position where they need a full-time chief technology officer, but they're starting to integrate some technology, and they really want to be very strategic about it for the whole portfolio. But they maybe there's a 10 or 20 hour a month, or maybe it's a half-time role, or we're going to grow into a full-time role. We'll sit in that position for them and help them be very strategic, and then help them at some point in time hire that position into a full-time. It also sometimes will start out in that fractional kind of executive strategic role that will help them build a roadmap that will help them then kind of lead into the other verticals as well for that leasing or that on-site technology, where they just aren't quite sure where to start. Sometimes it starts with that executive partnership role.
Yeah, fantastic. So share a story, Shaun, where someone pushed you or inspired you that you can do it, even though maybe you didn't think that you could, and the impact that that person had on you.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. When I first started, it was, like I said, it started out as really kind of helping out some friends, right? And so I was getting, wasn't hard to get meetings, and a lot of times the meetings that I was getting were the guys whose names were on the door, right? So
Right.
I might have a call with these guys or a conversation, and they would say, hey, you should talk to this guy in marketing, and I would have the conversation with the person in marketing, and they would say, it's great, you should talk to this person in operations, and I would have the conversation with that person in operations, and they would say, hey, I think that sounds fantastic, but you should talk to this person over here. So I
Yeah.
would get bounced around kind of within the organization a lot, and I would have several different conversations. And so I would end up spending maybe more time than I was used to in the prior industries that I worked in, trying to figure out exactly who the champion was or who I was supposed to talk to. And I was really kind of struggling with um, what to do with that. And I was used to really in kind of my prior existence and what I did, before was not really focused so much on real estate, but we worked with, Coca-Cola and American Airlines and some of these bigger companies who were a little more used to consulting work and outside work. And they'd be, very clear that, either we don't have budget or we do have budget, or
Right.
they would tell you fairly quickly, kind of, where they sat within their life cycle of making these types of decisions, or who was the champion of these projects. The real estate market I found was a little more immature from making some of those decisions. And so, I had somebody finally tell me, I was kind of letting them know that I was having this challenge, and they kind of bluntly told me, they're like, well, no one's going to tell you they hate you. Like, you gotta, take a step back and kind of read the room a little bit and understand that they were told to take this meeting by probably their boss or someone that owns the company. And so, of course, they're going to take the call, and of course, they're going to be nice to you, and of course, they're going to listen to you. And not that people in general are not going to be like that, but you've got to really, understand not just the conversation, but work your way through and pull out the right information and try to really find that champion. And so, having this conversation with a colleague of mine and trying to really take the notes I had, and really what else I found was that, like, each one of these groups, it wasn't as clear from, what I used to work with. It was very clear, it was either the CMO or it was a step below, or it was someone I was very clear on the title or the person I was going to address. It was not clear on the real estate side. These organizations are not from a organizational chart. They're not designed the same.
Right.
They don't all have the same roles underneath. So being much more strategic in kind of how the conversations went, being more direct with, this is what this is what a project would look like. This is what it costs. Are you guys at this point in time? Are you ready for something like this? Is this in budget? Is this a next year project? So being much more direct and not I guess assuming that they understand the process, but being more assertive, and that really helped me narrow the time frame and the conversations so that we really got to the right people, and we didn't drag this conversation out when there maybe wasn't the opportunity that I thought there was.
Yeah, I really like that, because we can spend a lot of time on a hope if we don't have our sales process clear, and we're not being diligent with that pre-qualifying and asking the right questions to understand. And I like what you said too. Like, people are going to be polite and nice, especially if someone else in their organization asks them to meet with you. But though, even more important to ensure that we're being effective with everybody's time and getting that clarity. Does this make sense to move forward or not?
Right.
That's awesome. So, Shaun, I'm sure you've had lots of different learnings throughout the years running, a couple of different businesses. But what's been your biggest learning as a business owner?
Yeah, I think it's it's to be open-minded, right? Like, you don't have to solve everything on your own. And I think as a person who is out there and trying to solve things, and I think people in the entrepreneurial type of role, you're inherently think that the answers to things. And I'll be the first to admit that I like to think that I know what I'm doing most of the time, and that I've got the answers to things, but really being open-minded to feedback and others that have done it before you. And I think it took me way longer than it should have to understand that others are really willing to help. And if I would have learned that maybe in my 20s as opposed to, my mid 30s, I would have probably progressed a lot, more quickly.
Yeah.
Knowing that, people have all done these things before I have, and we're not reinventing really anything.
Yeah.
So, going out and seeking that help, looking for a mentor early on. I mean, people like to help others,
Yes.
and seeking out that at an early point in time, and asking for help, not when you're at your breaking point where you're throwing your hands up and you can't get any further, but really even early on in the process to start to brainstorm what opportunities might be, or what solutions might be to problems,
Yeah.
or even just, like I said, getting that mentor, to help you think through things, or to, think through a career path, is really, really valuable. And so I think, that's been really helpful to me, is to take advantage of those opportunities that I've had to listen to people, and to take feedback, and to really take knowledge in from people who have done it before me. And then, hopefully at some point down the road, I can, reciprocate and be that person for somebody else as well.
It's so true in terms of the challenge of inviting other people in, because typically what happens is, right, in the first few years of starting a business, there's a whole lot of things to figure out and juggle, and right, and the hustle and grind and churn and burn, and then finally things start clicking and making sense, and the business is growing. But we're so focused on all of the things it took to get there, right? We oftentimes don't have that perspective of, hey, I wonder if I could have got there faster, right? Or more efficiently or more effectively. And then what got me here isn't what's needed to get me there. And so what other perspectives or knowledge or insights, might be available out there to help me to continue to grow and scale. So I
And it
appreciate.
doesn't even have to be, in the same industry. I think that's, something that it took me a long time to figure out too. My father-in-law is a retired oral surgeon, right? Like I couldn't be doing something more different, than what he did. But he also started this oral surgery practice, right? Like, so he developed a small business that grew into, a multi partner practice, and they were running, that business. But he has insights, that I can, use, that are so valuable. So it doesn't have to be someone who's doing, something that's exactly like what you were doing. There's just things that you can learn from people who have done things over time that are so valuable that,
Yes.
it's kind of, crazy not to be able to take advantage of those things as they present themselves.
Yeah, in fact, it's oftentimes better to talk to somebody outside of your
Mhm.
industry, because best practices are best practices, right? If they
Right.
work across industries, it's then a matter of, well, how do I adapt and adjust that into my business model, into my industry? And it allows more of a integration versus an industry specific, you know, learning from someone else. Is it oftentimes gets pigeonholed into, well, I have to do it exactly like, right, that other person is doing it, as opposed to, how do I bring that best practice in and
Right.
make my business better? Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Hey, Shaun, we know that business success doesn't happen in isolation. So tell us about one of your challenges over the years and somebody who came alongside of you and helped you through that.
Yeah. So, I think one of the challenges I've had, in the last couple of years, really, is trying to figure out exactly what the business plan is, right? And so I had an idea coming out of, originally working with the first kind of real estate groups that I worked with there in the 2019-2020 range. And then I officially incorporated ResTech in February of 2022. So I had written a business plan. I was really confident in what we were going to do. I had customers, or clients, I should say, that I was carrying over from, kind of pre incorporation through 21, and existing work into 22, and was very confident in kind of that plan. And then, as that year kind of went on, being able to be flexible though, and morph a little bit and understand what the market is telling you what the plan is. It's one thing to understand in your mind and get it on paper and have the plan. But there's a balancing act, I think, between understanding what that is and attacking that and having that sales plan, but also not painting a brush stroke that's too wide and thinking that you can do everything. And so I struggled a little bit with at first saying that this was my idea and this was kind of the path, and it wasn't quite resonating exactly with people beyond maybe what that first customer set was, and that's what I built the business plan on. Right. And then I kind of got to a point where I'd go into some of these meetings, and instead of understanding maybe what was being told to me as to what the what I was trying to resolve from the customer, I would kind of paint a brush stroke a little bit too wide, and then it would get confusing as to what we were really trying to resolve. And so again, I had a conversation with a couple of colleagues and the struggles I was having with really trying to close some accounts that I had some long conversations with, and we really broke down as to kind of where I started and where I was at, and I looked at it on on a whiteboard, and it was kind of confusing, and it wasn't as clear as to really what we were trying to solve. And so really making sure that it was we had a defined path, and that I really understood. If I'm not understanding exactly where we're trying to go with this, and it's going to be confusing for the customer as well. Right. So one, making sure just because we build a business plan around it, we've got to understand what the customer is also asking for. We've got to be able to be flexible and adjust to that, but also stay in our lane, right? Like we can't be everything to everybody, and make sure that we carve out our piece of it, and we can be really, really good at the things that we think we can be good at.
I love what you're saying in terms of that clarity, right? Having the internal clarity, making sure that it's being communicated externally. And it's so easy to scope creep, right? Of, well, hey, we could probably do that as well. Right. Yeah. Then we confuse ourselves, and then we confuse our prospects. And so that's awesome that, you were able to recognize that and focus back in on what you want to do well, and give yourself permission to say no to the things that don't make sense.
Right.
Hey, Shaun, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here and ask you to pick 3 people who have helped you with your business success and your journey. 3 people who you're most grateful for them being there to help you. Who are those 3 people? Yeah. How'd they help?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'll go in the Wayback Machine. There was a manager I had right out of school. So this was a long time ago. Bashir. He was I worked for a company called Braun Consulting here. Steve Braun out of college had a company here. Based out of Chicago, but he had a local office here. And I worked with a guy named Bashir who really challenged me. He was the guy that would get me on his team, and I was able to move up really, really quickly. And he put me in positions that I probably didn't have the experience for. Probably maybe was in over my head most of the time. But he also didn't put me in a position to fail. He gave me just enough leeway that I could find my way through things, but also was very good about debriefing on things and making sure that we understood, which direction I should be going and what went right and what things I could improve on. But really pushed me hard to run really fast and to move up really quickly. He also was my champion and was able to get me promoted fairly quickly. Was also probably why I left that company fairly quickly, because I felt like he gave me the confidence to go out and start my own. That was kind of the reason why I started the first company that I had. Was he gave me that confidence that I could go and sit in front at a fairly young age, in my mid to early 20s. I could sit in front of very high level individuals and have big conversations, and that gave me the confidence to go out on my own. So he was the first one that I think really gave me the confidence and pushed me and let me know that I had the ability to do that stuff. And so I still am in communication with him, and I thank him for really setting the framework for that confidence. I think the confidence has a lot to do with kind of where you go from there. The next one, I kind of group them together, and I would put this around this group of real estate friends that I have that really kind of set the framework for where I'm going with this business that I have today. And one of those is Andrew Held and then Brian Barrett. Those guys, as I was transitioning out of, like I said, as we were selling this other company, and at the end of 2020 is when we actually closed on it, but we were, kind of in the transition of it in the 2019 timeframe. I was kind of looking at what else I should do, and as I was having those conversations with those guys, they were really open. Obviously, they wanted my help, but also allowing me to, experiment and be part of their team and really build an idea. I don't think anybody knew it was going to turn into a business at that point in time. But the idea of trying different things and and helping them grow their side of the business, but at the same time, being open to new ideas that really weren't part of the industry, or were really fairly new to the industry at that point in time. And so those guys, the openness that they had and the feedback that they gave me and the leeway that they gave me to be able to be part of their basically their companies without really being an employee of their companies. And really that gave me, again, the confidence to be able to go out and start a company based on the feedback and the knowledge that I gained. I was not, I've been a passive investor in real estate for the last 15 years, but I've not come from the real estate industry. But I learned so much from being in their meetings and around those guys, and the language and the how to speak, to individuals in that industry from being, around those companies. And I really thank those guys, for that. And the final one is a really close friend of mine, Brad Frawley. It was interesting. We had parallel tracks. He was starting a business kind of at the same time I was. And it was interesting because he'd have like really good days as maybe I had a low day, and we'd communicate, and he'd pull me up, and maybe it'd be vice versa. And so he was kind of the cheerleader I had, or the guy we'd meet, every couple of weeks for breakfast, and we'd talk on the phone, regularly. And he'd gone through this a couple of times, and he just became that really trusted confidant to, let me know when I was struggling with something, or, when I was going through certain things. He was just a good sounding board and had really good ideas, and he was good with connections. And, I still, obviously, we still talk all the time, and he's a super close friend, but he just was really that guy that helped me through some of the really rough, periods where, I just was, if I had lacked confidence, I could talk to him, and he would really kind of help me talk through, what the issue really was, and we could break it down. And it wasn't, this giant issue. It was really these 3 or 4 small things that we could tackle one at a time and kind of figure something out. So, I look at, I could go on, and there's 10 other people, but I look at those 3 people, or at least those 2 people, and then that kind of grouping of the real estate guys in general that really have gotten for this ResTech idea. I could look at those 3 and say that, like, I probably wouldn't be at this point with this business without kind of those groups of people.
That's awesome. Yeah, it is usually difficult to stop at 3. So I appreciate the pressure, right? That when I said I'm going to put you on the spot, right? It's a little uncomfortable to say, but I have 10 or 20 or 30 people that I would like to recognize. So Shaun, let's shift gears a little and talk about the future. So as you think about the next 1 to 2 years, what's your number one priority or challenge that you need to achieve or overcome in order to realize your goals?
Yeah. I mean, for us now, it's scale, right? Like, the business works, right? Like, I think we've proven that over the last, 2.5, 3 years. I don't think there's any, it's very rare that we go into a meeting and now that we kind of can focus on or find the right people to talk to, very rare that we would go into some place and it doesn't resonate that it's the right thing for a group, or it doesn't, that they're not at least having these conversations internally, or it's not something that they're doing. I kind of call it the friends and family program. I started with this group of people that I knew in a social circle, and they introduced me to other people, and that's kind of blossomed into another group. And then there's obviously the LinkedIn group, and it's kind of gone from there.
Yeah.
And so I've got this, this book of business that's really, really good. And now we've expanded and we've grown. And now my next challenge is, I've brought on a guy that's specifically, strategically trying to get us into other markets. And so my goal now is, let's go find some people that I've never been connected to before. Like I have no connection to, and let's really try to scale this business and tell this story outside of, Indianapolis in the Midwest, and see how, see how far this resonates. I think, our story in similar markets, around, the central part of the United States, plays really, really well. And so, I think that's our next hurdle is, the next, 3 years, we've been, fortunate to be able to, exponentially grow, over the last 2.5 years. And I think we can continue to do that. We're just, we're going to need to do that outside of probably just this market. And I think that's our next big goal is how do we make those connections beyond, kind of the immediate market that we've kind of been in today.
Yeah, that's exciting. You alluded to it a couple times as you answered that question of, the concept of what got us here won't get us there. So building the initial idea and getting the momentum and seeing that it's working is a different approach than the scaling, right? Of now let's double, triple, quadruple, etc. So very exciting times that you guys are in. Thanks for sharing.
Absolutely.
Hey, last question, Jim Rohn, an awesome, past business guru. Fortunately, he's no longer with us, but one of his quotes I love is, "We become the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with." So as you think about that quote, what advice would you have for business owners who are trying to do it on their own?
Yeah. I would go back to part of what I said earlier is listen, right? Like, the loudest guy in the room is probably not the most successful guy. It's the guy in the corner, right? That's listening. He's probably the guy that you want to go seek out. Is the guy that is not the one that's telling you how successful he is. But when I think about, if I was, if this business went down and it didn't work, or I sold this business and wanted to start something new, I would look at an industry that either knew or was I thought an up and coming or a big industry, and I would find a niche within that industry. And I think that's kind of what we did here, right? Real estate obviously is not new. It's the largest asset class in the world. So it's not like I uncovered some gem under a stone, right? But what we're doing is we're trying to take advantage of something that we saw an opportunity in. Over the last, say, since 2019, when we first started working in this, there really hasn't been anything that I've tried to solve that we didn't solve in other industries 5 or 10 years ago. So we're just repurposing some of the decision making that we did in an industry that just hasn't caught up, right? So again, find a niche and stay, in an industry that maybe just isn't, quite there yet, or that needs, has an opportunity there. But I think there's plenty of those opportunities out there. Find something that you're passionate about. I think, like I said, I've been a passive investor on the real estate side. I think real estate's super interesting. I mean, it's not going anywhere. It's not obviously not going to go away. So I think, for me, that was the right opportunity. And I think timing wise, someone else is going to, people are going to figure this out at some point in time. And I think, from timing wise, it was the right for me. So finding the right timing, the right niche in a big industry, I think is a good path to finding a successful business.
Awesome. Shaun, it sounds like you've been blessed with some incredible people in your journey. If they were all here on the show today, what would you want to say to them?
Well, you're right. I have been incredibly blessed with good people around me, and feel incredibly blessed by that. And it's impossible to thank, all of them, and hopefully they understand that. And I guess the best way to thank all of those types of people that have done that for me is to do it for somebody else. Mm-hmm. So, I'm always open to helping people. And I think that's one of the great things about Indianapolis as well is even in competing industries, which is I worked a good majority of my career in Chicago, where the last company I had was based out of it, and it was a very different atmosphere up there. Where here, even in companies that compete against each other within the same space, they still tend to help each other out when certain questions come up or you've got issues. And so there's a great community here in Indianapolis, and hopefully I contribute back to that and be part of that. And I look forward to the day that I can continue to mentor other people and help them out as well when that opportunity arises.
I love it. Shaun, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, Tim, it was a pleasure, and it was great to get a chance to speak to you and get to know you a little bit more as well.
Thanks for listening to the Self-Made is a Myth show. Please help spread this movement by liking and subscribing to our show and following us on Facebook and LinkedIn. To join our movement, go to bemadtogether.com. Okay, folks, that's a wrap. Please pay it forward and be sure to tune in next time to the Self-Made is a Myth podcast.